Good evening, Manfred. Nice to meet you this evening. As you participate in this Ecumenical Funding Partners Forum, as part of it, we would like to interview with you. If you could share about your organization and some of the information that would be helpful for us. Could you share something about the agency that you represent?
Yes, I'm happy to do so. My name is Manfred. I'm representing Overseas Council International, which is an agency that started 40 years ago. Very simply, 4 businessmen were sent by their local church to find out how best their church could serve mission. And the 4 businessmen came back, and all 4 agreed the best thing would be to train national leaders in their own country in terms of theological education. And so the 4 got together and started an organization they called Overseas Council for Theological Education and Mission. And they decided that they will support the training of national men and women who want to be prepared for ministry, to become pastors or missionaries. And that was just about 40 years ago, and the organization started in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is about an hour south of Chicago, right in the middle of the United States. And they began to support a few students with a scholarship. Well, from that very small beginning, right now we become quite a large agency. We are helping students in virtually all the countries of the non-Western world. They decided of only supporting theological schools in the non-Western world, or the majority world. In former years we said the third world, but today we don't use this term anymore. But right now we have partnership with 130 theological schools in the non-Western world, with approximately 40,000 students to be trained for the ministry. And we have 36 schools in Africa, seminaries in Africa, the same amount in Latin America and in Asia, in the Middle East, and the former Soviet Union, the Eurasia area. And we provide support for 5 areas. We help with scholarships for students, and over the years we have supported thousands of students. We help with faculty and staff development. We give scholarships for faculty to get their doctor degree in the various institutions, but also staff, from a bookkeeper to secretary to librarian to fundraisers, people who really are committed to the theological institution they're serving. Then thirdly, we help with campus development. We help with funding of library or dormitory or lecture halls. Although I have to say the support of buildings, campuses has been reduced, because we felt investment in people and in program is much more better investment than in buildings. So we like to emphasize more the support of students and faculty. Fourthly, we have a program to help with the tools that every seminary needs, library books, for instance, or a computer lab, or maybe a program helping to get a generator on campus, because electricity is not provided all the time, or satellite for internet connection. So we try to help theological institutions with the basic tools they need. And then finally, and that is probably the most important one, we have a training program, a consultancy program, where we invite the president or the principal of a school, plus the academic dean and one or two more people from each school, and we bring them together in a region for 1 week every year for a training program. And that has been a very, very exciting program. That training for the leaders of theological schools is so essential. So many of our presidents and academic deans, they don't have a training. They were good theologians, they were good pastors, they were maybe good teachers, but now they have been appointed to be president or be academic dean and usually don't know how to do their job. And so we have these 1 week training programs for the leadership of our partner seminaries, and we deal with strategic planning, we deal with finances, budget, accountability, how to deal with issues that are really administrative issues. We deal with curriculum development, with faculty development, we help with fundraising, we help with relationship building between the seminary and the church and the institution and their denomination. So we try to help in a kind of a Christian management program the leaders of these theological schools, and we are doing that now for close to 15 years, and it is probably one of the finest and best programs that we came up with, and many of these leaders come back and said that was a great help, and it saved them a lot of headaches and a lot of time. So Overseas Council has these ministries. We are still located in Indianapolis. We have started a branch operation in Canada, in Australia, in New Zealand, in the British Isles, and in Europe. Although these 5 so-called affiliates are now independent and they're doing their own job, they have their own board, they have their own administration, they have their own directors, some even have changed their names, but we are still together in an Overseas Council network, communicating with each other, telling what we are doing, and so it is a kind of a large family who is helping in terms of theological education. We have a president, it's Dr. David Baer, who has been the principal of a theological school in Costa Rica for over 15 years, so he has some experience. And in the last 3 years, we have started something very unique. We have appointed in each one of the major region or the major continent a national director. We have an African who is responsible for Africa. We have a person from Latin America who is responsible for Latin America, and one for Asia, and one for the Middle East, who speaks the Arab language and is familiar with the issues theological schools face in the Middle East. And we have someone in former Soviet Union, in Eurasia, and we have someone in China, and I'm personally still very much involved with the ministry in China. So that's our ministry, that's where we come from. We have a board of primarily businessmen, which is quite unique. We have a couple of theologians, but the majority are businessmen, and so we try to be business-oriented, and we felt that that is a good way to counterbalance the theological development. So that's our organization, and as I'm happy today that the director or the executive director of Overseas Council Germany is here, or he is in Germany, it's for all Europe, and we also have the person who is in charge of Overseas Council Canada, which has now its own name. He's also here, and so we are quite well represented, and we are very honored to be here and to share and I hope there will be a closer connection between WCC and Overseas Council in the future.
Okay, well, you have given a very clear picture about the organization as well, how you work with the different theological institutions in different countries and in the different regions. Could you say something about how do you assess the needs of the partners? Do you have any specific mechanism in assessing this, especially related to the theological education?
Yeah, we have now the advantage of having a regional director in each of the continent who is visiting the schools, who is meeting with the president, with the board of each school, and they discuss how we can help. I think the best illustration would be we come along a theological school, the leadership, and we probably put our arm around that person and say, my friend, we are here to help you. How can we help you? And then we discuss what they need, and we have to analyze, does that fit? Because so many times people have ideas and wishes that are unrealistic, and so we have to discuss it, what is possible and what is feasible and what is good. And then we have a kind of an agreement, a kind of standards of excellence, and we give that document to each school and say, would you please read it over? If we want to enter into partnership, we really want to be sure that you know what we expect from you and what you can expect from us. Partnership has to go both ways, and so we have that agreement of partnership with both groups have to agree, both groups have to sign it, and then we start with a partnership. And sometimes it is just a few scholarships for students, sometimes they need some help with books. They're all invited to come to the Institute of Excellence that takes place once a year, but that's the way we assist and help schools.
Okay, fine. In your perception, what are the needs for future cooperation between the different agencies and partners related to the theological education?
Yeah, I personally wish there would be more communications among the different agencies, that we should get together, I believe, more often and talk things over, to point out there are certain schools that really need help in a certain area, and not everyone can help in every possible way. So we should agree, well, if you are good in doctoral study scholarships, you help them. We are more involved in library development or journal development, or someone else said, well, we have an expert who can help with campus design and campus development, and so we should talk with each other a little bit more, help each other. All the donor agencies should participate more in a dialogue, and I think we could assist and help and complement each other much more than we have done in the past. There is so much duplication. The theological training program needs indeed a revision. We know that in some places there are 4, 5, 6 schools, all within the same area. They have to learn to work a little bit closer together and to have not so much duplication. I believe theological education has been on its own for too long, and everyone was doing whatever they felt they liked to do, instead of having some kind of a cohesive sharing and helping each other, and if necessary assisting each other to the point of having some critical voices heard of how can we do it better.
Okay. How do you evaluate the need of international programs supporting the theological education, or who should support this institution, international dialogue and networking, in your opinion?
Well, we believe very strongly that every theological school should have their own fundraising department. They should not depend on help from the outside. I have been involved in in teaching theological schools, the leadership of theological schools, how to be involved in biblical stewardship, how to have a person on staff who writes proposals, who comes up with building relationship with local churches, so that every church in the city or in the country should support one student, at least to some extent. I think we should only have help from outside, from overseas, on a limited amount, a limited basis. The most funds should come locally. And quite many schools have started to see the significance, and there are lots of funds available. I'm so glad our friend who came from Africa said, we in Africa, we have a lot of resources, we just have to mobilize them, and the same is true for Asia, and the same is true for the Middle East and other parts of the world. I think every theological school should have a program of local fundraising. And they also should teach, every seminary should teach biblical stewardship, how to deal with money. I'm afraid that so many seminaries neglect that aspect, and if they don't speak about that, it will be never preached from the churches, and people don't realize how important it is to support theological education, how to support Christian ministries. People just give whatever they have left over. And so we should teach much more in our seminaries, and therefore also being preached from our pulpit, that all that we have and all that we are belongs to God, and we should share it for His kingdom.
Fine. Could you share something about the priorities, the possible common projects that you would like to suggest for this forum?
Well, first of all, I'm very, very happy that we have this meeting, and I think Dr. Dietrich Werner did an outstanding job of bringing all the people together and put a good program together. I think it was outstanding, and he should be congratulated for a job excellently done. So I'm very happy for that. I think it should continue, that dialogue should continue. I recommended there should be a follow-up meeting within the next 18 months or so, where the same group and all the other foundation and all the others institutions who support theological education should be invited and sit around the conference table. There must be at least 20 or 30 or 40 more institutions who could be invited and come. So I would recommend that we should continue with it. We should have a better understanding what are the standards, how can we find a way that theological education becomes more effective, so that the money that is being invested really produces good results. I believe there should be a list of standards that can be established, and many of our partner schools are very grateful that they have finally seen a list of what is expected and what they could do and what direction they should improve. And I think a conference like that could be a good tool for that.
Okay, finally, what are the most urgent needs in relationship between the churches and institutions of theological education today?
I think we have neglected, we theologians have neglected to have a better relationship with the church. I like to see that the theological institution and the leadership of the church is working much closer together. They have to learn that a theological institution should be part of the church. The training program of the future leaders should be part of the church. I don't think the church should dictate what a theological school should do, because the theological seminary, a theological institution should be the prophetic voice, so to speak, for the church. But they should cooperate, they should work together. I have seen a theological seminary who is inviting every week for one day a local church to bring the elders and the mission committee and the pastor and the priest to come to the seminary to see what they are doing and participate in it. I think we should have some of our senior clergy to come and teach in the seminary practical issues, and I like to see students to be assigned to a senior pastor or priest and say, why don't you learn from him or her what has to be done in terms of ministry. So in summary, I like to see a much, much closer relationship between the training of future leaders for the church and the church itself. They have to work hand in hand.
Thank you, Manfred. Really, the information that you have shared and the suggestions and the what to do and what is the expectation of what is expected of the theological institutions as well. What is expected of the church is clearly spelled out by you. Thank you so much for your sparing your time and sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. God bless you.
Thank you.